Hi, Liz Feezor. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Amy?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being with us today. I saw that you had given a presentation, I think it was at Austin Social Media Week about LinkedIn. And this is a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. So I'm so excited that you could join us today. Tell us about you. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for the opportunity. This is exciting. My background is a little bit varied. So, after about a 15-year corporate career in HR and employee benefits, and then most recently SaaS software consulting, I broke off to do my own thing a little over 2 years ago. And now I work for myself as Liz Feezor Creative LLC, focusing on bios and copy for solopreneurs and very small businesses. So basically, think of me as a ghostwriter for your professional story.
I love that. And tell us a little bit about why you would recommend to photographers that they use their LinkedIn and make sure it's looking great and how they can best take advantage of LinkedIn for their business.
Yeah, and that's a big question, and a big part of the reason why my first service that I offer to people is basically a LinkedIn bio review and overhaul. LinkedIn is a really powerful tool for storytelling. First of all, it's the professional social network. It's been around for over 10 years at this point, and it's evolved to so much more than just the digital version of a resume or a CV that it was when it first launched. Since Microsoft bought it a few years ago, it's actually gotten better, which is kind of counterintuitive. A lot of times, like, great platforms get purchased by these behemoths and they just lose their great things. But what's happened with LinkedIn is that a lot of different other features and things like lynda.com becoming LinkedIn Learning, it's just become more robust. And as time goes on, more and more people in every industry, including creative fields like photography and writing, like we're in, are on LinkedIn using it to network and establish themselves as subject matter experts and experts in their respective fields. So think of LinkedIn as like an Instagram for your professional presence, or like a Facebook that's a little bit more professional. It's a social platform. It works in a lot of the same ways. It has a lot of the same algorithmic tendencies where it likes to have its own native content pushed on there. It wants you to spend time in it. It wants you to be sharing and engaging and interacting. But it's really a great vehicle for telling your professional story. And when you know how it works and how to leverage the different pieces and parts within LinkedIn to tell them your story the most effectively you can, it's going to do great things for your career. So that's why I really love talking about it and helping people realize just how powerful a tool it actually is for not only networking, but getting jobs, making big career shifts. It's really how people are making connections and making changes and advancements in their career right now.
And you mentioned the algorithm. Do you know much about that? Is it similar to Facebook where or Instagram where the more active you are, the more likely you are to come up in the feed?
Exactly. And I'm not the right person to ask in terms of like the back end stuff and exactly how the algorithm works. But on a surface level, I do know that the more robust your profile is, the more fields that you have filled in, the more details, the more keywords and phrases that you have in there for, say, for example, it's it's not recruiters going through and looking at profiles anymore. It's resume bots that are going in and scraping and looking for keywords and phrases. And so the better you have those things woven into your profile and the more fields you have filled in, the more complete your profile is, it's going to appear higher in searches when people like, super users and people who are looking to hire people for jobs and recruiters and things like that are searching, your profile will appear higher. Now, a big part of that, kind of part A, is creating a really robust presence and optimizing your profile, but it's not going to do much for you if you're not sharing, if you're not engaging with people. It's unreasonable to expect that, hey, I have this kick-ass profile now, people are just going to come see it. And if you've been on the internet or on social for any amount of time, you know that that's not necessarily the case. You have to get out there, you have to engage with people. You have to put yourself out there and spend some time in the platform creating and engaging with content, which is a big part of how that pushes your profile up in that search.
That's interesting. I always tell my photographers I think they should take advantage of posting some of their new work on LinkedIn and now it sounds like from what you're saying, they should also be making sure they are taking care to use some hashtags there. Do you have anything more to say about that?
Yeah, posting your own content is great. LinkedIn likes content in general, but the thing about LinkedIn is it likes its own native content more. So for example, if you post an outlink to your portfolio or an article, a piece of editorial content that you did that's somewhere else outside of LinkedIn, that's never going to get in front of as many eyes as a LinkedIn article, which is its own separate animal. It's like a publishing tool within the platform. So if you have a way of even reconstituting content that you already have, if you have a blog post that's still super relevant right now, you can always reuse that and repost it as a LinkedIn article. And just by virtue of the fact that it's within its own platform in LinkedIn, it's going to get more eyeballs on it. But anything that you share, any form of content and engagement is going to be great. And you mentioned hashtags, that's another great way of sharing and making sure that people outside your network, so those great second and third degree connections, your kind of friends-in-law or connections-in-law that you have, that's the great thing about LinkedIn is it shows your content to these people. When your people engage in stuff, it's going to show your content to those second and third degree connections, which could be a lot of those people that you want to be engaging with and reaching out to and getting in front of.
Yes, that's great. What are your tips for about section? That is your area of specialty, helping people with their bios and talk about themselves. What are your tips there?
Yeah, and this is another big question. This is a big part of what I do. So first of all, the about section is basically your opportunity to tell a story about yourself within your profile. It's a great idea to think about the keywords and phrases that you want to weave in there, but not make it a bulleted list of content. Bulleted lists are great for putting into your work experience as those like nice, strong action verbs, like you advocated for, you empowered, you did this, you have this qualification, X, Y, and Z. Bulleted lists are great for your work experience. But when it comes to the about section, it's all about creating a narrative that tells your story and that reaches the people and invites them in that you want to be reaching. So you have 2,000 characters to work with within your about section. And I always tell people to do the best you can to maximize that space. And it's funny because 2,000 characters sounds like a lot, but it's only about 350 words when you include spaces. So you do have actually quite a bit of space and opportunity to give a little bit of information about your background. But I like to couch all of the kind of who, what, where, when, why, the story of you within a couple of different things. So I love starting about sections with a compelling statement or question to draw people in and to give people an idea for who you are and what you're all about. Then get into your story, your background, what you do now, your qualifications, your credentials, and then end your about section with a nice invitation or a call to action, inviting people to reach out to you. Message me here on LinkedIn, email me here, check out my portfolio at this link. It's a great way to present information about yourself, but also interact with people. I always say to write it in the first person because it's your profile. And unless you're somebody like Gary Vaynerchuk or Ariana Huffington or somebody who's obviously not running their own LinkedIn page, you just ain't famous enough to pull off the third person in LinkedIn. So I would say always write it in first person for that reason. You want to create that sense of connection right away. Your headline, which appears in your up top in the identity section, that little box that's got your headshot, your background photo, all of that nice information. Your headline is a great opportunity to kind of tease, if you will, the about section.
That is wonderful. And I always tell my clients to use first person as well when they're doing their about pages on their websites. I feel like third person, like you said, should be reserved for, Helmut Newton or Irving Penn or someone really famous who doesn't have time or need to actually. So that's some really great advice. Can you speak a little bit about recommendations and endorsements? Are those important to have?
Yes, 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 and yes. So the endorsements come in as part of your skills. So within your LinkedIn profile, you have the opportunity to choose, I want to say it's like 30 something skills, up to 30, and you can actually pin your top 3. So when you go in the little like pencil icon to edit and to add skills that you want to be endorsed for, you have the opportunity to pin, there's a little like push pin icon next to them, your top 3. So when you're choosing your top 3, you want to consider the ones that you really want to be known for and that you want people to endorse for, because the eye only goes to the top. Very few people are ever going to click and scroll and see like, what are these person's like 50 skills that they have. They're only going to see the top 3 when they're invited to endorse you. So I always suggest picking those top 3 ones that you want to be like your cornerstone skills, the ones that you really want to be known for. And then recommendations, those are gold. Those are social proof. Think of those as your own Yelp review within your own LinkedIn profile. When a connection of a connection or somebody is going through a list of people, a list of photographers for a job, for example, and has never worked with you before, having a recommendation from somebody who has worked with you recently. Too often I see people that have recommendations have them from like years and years ago. And while that's great, it doesn't necessarily mean that the work you're doing now is relevant and pertinent to what this person is looking at you to potentially do for a job. So always don't be shy to ask people for recommendations, especially people that you want to give them one in return. Those reciprocal recommendations are great. I've done it for like past bosses that I've had in corporate, so they can speak to my leadership skills, my transferable skills that I had in corporate that I use now as a solopreneur. And I also have people from my current life, if you will, people who've seen me speak, people who I've done work for who can speak to my writing abilities, speaking abilities, etc. So having current recommendations where people are very specific in talking about how they've worked with you, the type of work that you've done, that's gold. That's going to be one of the best things that you can have in a profile.
That's great information. Great tips there. What about LinkedIn Premium? Is that worth getting?
It depends on what you want to use LinkedIn for. So I've used it in the past. I think you can get it for free for 30 days, like regardless of who you are. If you're an active job seeker, it might be worth it just because it gives you those in-mail notifications and it lets you see the people who are looking at your profile. But there's so many great ways to leverage the free features that are within LinkedIn and make connections, like using exactly what we talked about, creating content, asking for recommendations. There are great ways of beefing up your presence that a premium, I don't know. It really, unless you are actively looking for a full-time job, it might not be worth it.
Okay, that's good to know. And one question that I skipped over, let's talk about best practices for using LinkedIn. Let's talk about etiquette as far as connecting with people that you know or don't know or kind of know. What do
Mm-hmm.
you think about those things?
There are different schools of thought here, and I can just tell you what I do based on what I've learned and what other experts that I've learned from are telling you. Don't hesitate in asking for a connection to somebody that you've met in person. If it's somebody that you're friends with, that you already know, like you and I obviously know each other, so I didn't think twice about reaching out and connecting with you on LinkedIn because we know each other. People that you've met just like acquaintances or a professional kind of warm contact, I would absolutely reach out and connect and especially add that little note. You can always personalize your invite, and especially for people who aren't already, friends or close enough with you or work with you right now, make sure that you're adding that personalized invite to give people context and to just make people feel like you're not just, randomly clicking to add to your network. The thing about LinkedIn is that everybody wants a more robust, broad network. We all want more people in our network. So when you invite somebody to connect, unless it's somebody that you don't know or, I don't know, actively don't want to be associated with, everyone wants a bigger network. So bear that in mind and don't be shy about, creating that little nice personalized invite. It doesn't ever have to be something long or overwrought, just like a nice little note. Hey, saw that we have a lot of great people in common, wanted to connect with you and reach out on LinkedIn. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you. It doesn't ever have to be anything more complicated than that.
I agree with that. Using the note, I think, is really important, especially if you don't know someone. Being able to give a little bit of context of how you came across them or why you want to connect to them. I think
Mm-hmm.
putting in that personal note will increase your chances of actually making that connection. So I think that's really good. advice there. Okay. So I asked a few of my clients if they wanted to have their LinkedIn page reviewed by us, and you and I chose Annie Ray, and we're going to look at her LinkedIn page and give a little bit of a critique there. She is a commercial photographer based in Austin, Texas. She's really well known here. And if you want to jump over to that screen, let's see what you have to say about it.
Yep, so I'm sharing my screen. Can you see that right now?
I can, yes.
Okay, now I'm logged in as me and not as Annie, obviously. She and I aren't connected. That's interesting. I'll have to connect with her.
She's not
So
connected with me either. I fussed at her the other day for
she
it.
must not be in it very much. But yeah, Annie, as you mentioned, she's a wonderful person. She's amazingly talented and very well known within the Austin community. So it only makes sense for her to work on beefing up her profile and spending more time actually engaging within LinkedIn to grow even, beyond and make herself even more well known and establish her professional brand. So LinkedIn profiles, I think of them as having three main sections, and you can kind of think of it visually as your own personal marketing funnel. Wherein at the top of the funnel, if you're familiar with the marketing funnel, we're creating awareness, we're making people aware of who we are and what we do. And as the marketing funnel narrows, we're educating people more and more, we're giving them more touch points and information to eventually turn them into fans and make them want to connect with you and advocate for you and become brand loyal, basically. So at the top of our marketing funnel that is a LinkedIn profile here is the identity section. And this top box is your identity. It's kind of at a snapshot, top of funnel, visually giving people an idea for who you are and what you do. Now, Annie, she's an amazing photographer. She has a headshot here, but she's a little bit far away. The only thing that I might suggest for her headshot is to make her head actually, the center, make it a headshot and not so much like, a further away, like it looks like she might be working here type of shot. A shot like this would actually be perfect for the background photo. So Annie has committed the cardinal sin of LinkedIn and left a field open. So LinkedIn loves to have its open fields completed. It wants for you to go in and fill in all the details. And one of the most obvious visual things is this background photo. When you don't have anything filled in, this is what you see, this little like blue Sputnik, I don't know what this is, like pattern. So a picture of her in action, like if she has a nice, good high-res photo of her on set, of her photographing somebody, like that would be the perfect photo. Any photo of you in action doing your thing is always my number one choice for a background photo. And then having a nicer, like closer in shot of her face, looking at the camera, smiling, or she's the only thing within frame. That's what I would suggest for a headshot. Her headline, I always suggest for headlines, and when I write for clients, it's never your title and your company. The reason for that is it's redundant. You're wasting real estate that you could be using elsewhere because this appears in your work experience. Your headline is a great opportunity for you to tell a short little story, again, like I talked about before, that kind of teases in your about section. So for Annie, I don't know what we could say about Annie. Something like, I make moments super memorable with a perfect shot, or something that's catchy, grabby, something that describes who she is and what she does within this 120 character maximum that you have within a headline. So anything other than your title and your company, write a little short story about yourself here. That's what's going to get more eyeballs and be more compelling.
Okay.
She's got over 500 connections. That's great. Let's see what she has in her contact info. So here's one thing that I always suggest changing. LinkedIn, if you have especially a common name, it's going to assign this random series of numbers and letters to your URL. You can actually change that. So I'll X out of this. It looks like she's got a lot of great, websites here. She doesn't have an email address, which is one thing I would suggest that she add. And if she's active on Twitter, maybe adding her Twitter account. But when you're logged in as yourself, you have an option that will appear up here to edit your public URL. And that's where you can change it. She might have like Annie Ray Photographer as her URL, something that's custom, something that's memorable, that she won't forget when she's filling in like fields for what's your LinkedIn profile, and that other people, it's going to be more memorable to them too. It's just one opportunity to show that you're detail oriented without telling people you are.
I love that.
So let's see, her about section, she's not doing terribly bad. I mean, in that she's filled in this box with information. Too many people have like nothing. This is in third person. So she's written about herself as, Annie is, Annie does. Again, my personal preference is to always have it in the first person because it helps people feel like they're connecting with you. Again, this is your LinkedIn profile, an opportunity for you to get in front of people as though you're speaking directly to them. This list of credentials and publications that she's been in, she might weave in a couple of these into her about section, but I might suggest that she put this in her work experience. So in her work experience, I don't know if she has Annie Ray Creative set up as a company in LinkedIn, but see how these like little icons are blank?
Right.
For consistency's sake, it's nice to have something in there. So if your Welcome Studios has an icon for their company, if she has like a logo that she can put in there, the key to any of the detail within here and work experience and anything that appears below that is consistency. So filling in those little details, adding a lot of her credentials into these areas, and moreover, adding media. So LinkedIn has media that it used to be part of your about, actually. So any URLs or PDFs or photos or whatever you have that you want to draw people's attention to, it used to appear as like part of your about. And now, as of, I want to say like 5 days ago, it changed, and now it's a featured section. So I'll toggle over to mine so I can show you what you mean, or show you what I mean. And see, under your about, now you have this featured section where you can put links to your website, to recent work, to whatever you want people to pay attention to give them some context for what you do. It's a great way of visually guiding people throughout your profile. I tell people, pick at least one and no more than 3. Any more than 3, people tend to get overwhelmed and like, what do I pick? This person is like just throwing all this information at me. So for Annie, I might pick like her website to put in her featured, and then put in some, I mean, obviously she's got a ton of work out there. So maybe pick a couple highlights to stick in under her experience. Again, speaking to that consistency, she's got months in some spots, but then like obviously years in education. I tell everybody to only pick the years for your experience and just leave the months off completely. It's just cleaner visually. And look, she's got like a location for this, but not for that. Make sure it's consistent. Whatever you choose, just consistency is key here.
Okay, that's great.
And then same for, consistency here. If she chooses to keep the years, do that. I tell people, if you're more than 5 years out of college, just take the years off. People just need to know you have the degree. They don't need to know when you got it. She's doing great with skills and endorsements. So she's been endorsed quite a few times for what I would assume to be her top 3 skills she wants to be known for. And then she has a couple of recommendations, but look, again, most recent, almost 6 years ago. So I would suggest for her to reach out on LinkedIn, and it's really easy to do. Like when she's logged in as herself, it appears right here as like an ask for a recommendation button. LinkedIn is wonderful in that it's very intuitive. I mean, even people who are not tech savvy at all, like, I mean, I kind of, I learned what I have to, but I'm not wired that way to like ask the question. Anyway, it makes it very easy for me to do what I need to do. But yeah, just soliciting recommendations and being willing to do that in return for people. Like if you did great work for somebody and it was great to work for them, they're going to want that recommendation. They're going to want people to know that, hey, they're a great person to work with. So yeah, she's got some accomplishments. So she's got a great start. It's just a matter of making things more consistent, and then visually telling a better story up top.
That's great. Thank you so much for doing that for Annie and for us.
Yeah.
So much great information. I'm so excited about this. Any additional things you want to say about LinkedIn?
About LinkedIn, obviously, I mean, I could talk about LinkedIn all day. It's a tool that I'm in multiple times a day. I'm always sharing and publishing content in there. And just in the time that I've been using it a lot more frequently in the last 2-ish years that I've been in business for myself, I've seen my network grow and my business grow proportional to how active I've been on LinkedIn. So before I started working for myself.
Wow.
My two previous corporate jobs I found on LinkedIn. I didn't have an in at either of those companies, but I found the jobs on LinkedIn. I used my LinkedIn profile to, boost my credentials and reach out to recruiters and things like that. So it's so powerful. And the more you use it, the better you'll get at it, and you'll see the returns. You will see your network grow. You will see your name appear on lists that you're like, how does that person know who I am? It's like, oh, you're a second degree connection of this person who you're connected with, and just things start to happen from there.
That's great. I definitely recommend it for my photographers to use and to post their new content, and to make sure that every time they're on a photo shoot, to connect with everyone who was on that shoot, the makeup artist, the stylist, the art director, so that when you post content, if people like that content, it shows up in their feed. And I love what you said about having a great photo. I love the idea of having your photo, with photographers, they kind of sometimes want to make things look artsy, but I feel like with your profile photo, you need to be looking at the camera, you need to be smiling, or at least looking warm. I feel like the eye contact in your photo is really your first point of establishing trust with a potential client. So that's my advice for my
You
photographer.
nailed it. Oh, you so nailed it. Yeah. I mean, there are spaces to be artsy and show who you are within LinkedIn,
Hmm.
especially like in the media and the featured, and ways for you to add, links to your work that is, what you want to be known for. But yeah, make sure you're looking at the camera. It's a professional website. And like what you said about trust, I mean, that's it. That's how we create a connection with people, is like through this headshot, this brief moment that people have to interact with our profile. It makes a big difference. So
And I have heard from art buyers, and I know that I've done this myself as an art buyer and as a photo editor. When we are looking to hire a photographer that we don't know, your portfolio is important, but then they are going to go to your LinkedIn page and they're going to see, do I know anyone who knows this person? Do I know anyone who has worked with this person? So that's another reason to be active on LinkedIn and to make it look good. Such great advice. Thank you, Liz. Tell us how
definitely.
we can find you. Tell us how we can work with you.
Yeah. So my website is lizfeezor.com, Lizfeezor. I'm super active in LinkedIn. So if you're listening to this, please feel free to reach out and send me a connection request. I will absolutely approve it and connect with you. I'm all about us all growing our networks. And I also really love Instagram, and I'm there at by Liz Feezor.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Amy. I loved it.